All right, testing. Is this on?
If you guys are hearing us and seeing us, please comment and we'll see it come through on the streaming software.
Yes. Please help us because nobody from either one of our teams is helping to confirm this is working. So
We got some people here.
all right, it appears that we have viewers.
Welcome to the live stream.
Welcome, yeah.
Stoked you guys are here.
Welcome to Anything But the Election, Tuesday, November 5th, 2024.
So Dean and I have some topics that we want to present on related to health, fitness, motivation, well-being. But if you also have questions that you would like us to address during this live stream, you can comment. We will see those and we'll weave those in really well. So
yes. So just to confirm that our comment section is working, if you can say something. Thank you, Run Mikey Run from Australia.
Hey, from Australia. Where in Australia are you at? If you comment back, we'd love to know. That's excellent.
Yes. And it's excellent that this technology is working. That's a good thing too. I can now see you. Oh, you're going to get booted, Mikey. Anything but the election, guys. Anything but the election. Think about other things. We're going to talk health and wellness, yoga and weight loss. We're going to talk motivation, consistency, and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about some things that you might not be aware of that could be harming your health and wellness efforts. So if you are eating well, if you are exercising consistently, other things that might make it more difficult that you might not know about. We're going to talk a lot about, we're going to get into kind of do some back and forth on the motivation consistency factor, because this is a big topic, right? You guys have the internet. You guys have the information. Okay, well, why don't we all have the body, have the fitness that we want, right? And that comes into motivation consistency. So we're going to get into that a lot because that's a topic that is really important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Weight loss.
Yeah, right? Weight loss, fitness, muscle
Yoga,
building. I have some nutrition stuff that's been on my mind and my heart that I'll definitely share and weave in throughout this. And if you have questions, again, please comment them. We'll see those coming through. Love seeing some friendly faces here. We got Craig, we got Ron, we got Jason. Anyways, a lot of great people. So Dean, why don't you kick us off with your thinking on motivation and discipline? Like, what's present for you in this discussion about how we can be more consistent, how you find motivation, you're so consistent?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start this off.
Yeah. So I think this part of it is logistical, right? It's just planning things in advance. There is a study that's referenced very often. It just tracks people following their physical therapy and whether or not they do it. And the people who made a specific plan were something like 90% more likely to do their exercise than the people who made no plan. So the first part of this is just being able to very clearly visualize what the week of your exercise ahead of you looks like. So you know when you're going to work out, you know where you're going to work out, you know which workout you're doing. You are looking at your schedule in such a way that you're saying, oh yes, this makes sense. This is realistic. I will have time to exercise here. There's realistically something that's not going to pop up and prevent me from doing it. And I will have enough energy at this time to do it. Yes, like motivation is great to have, but that's not ultimately necessary, right? We just need to make sure that we have the plan in place. If you feel not motivated all the time, then it's probably trying to go back to the drawing board. But if you feel motivated for 50% of your workouts, hey, that's great. So I think that's where we start, right? The logistical side. And then we'll talk a little bit more about having the clarity in reasons of motivation. I think this is where Dr. A does a really good job. So,
well, I think it's important, and we talk about this a lot in the Fit Father program, to create a very deep root of connection to why you want to be healthy. And this is why in the beginning parts of Fit Father program, we get into creating a mission statement. And the mission statement typically looks at all the areas of your life, beyond just how your body looks and how it feels, but how your actions around your health impact all of those areas. Like, how is your health impacting your ability to show up for your family? How is your health impacting your ability to have good financial health and productivity and energy? For me, highly motivating. How is my health related to my spirituality and my pursuit of moving closer to truth and what I experience as God? And I think once you get into some of these deeper reasons, and I think if you have an answer in the bucket of family, work productivity, your spirituality, and your finances, like, man, now we're creating a tapestry of motivation, and you're going to use different motivations at different times. Like, there are times of the year where I care more about like looking good. Maybe it's a family vacation coming up. I'm going to do a shoot at something and, I want to look good. Okay. I feel motivated for a short burst to train physically. But most of the time, what motivates me is the fact that I want to feel good. I want to feel clear. And I really lean on that motivation. The other thing that I think is relevant is to talk about the neuroscience and neurochemistry of motivation. It really comes down to this amazing molecule called dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that our brains release when we're seeking and creating goals. So what Dean said actually activates dopamine. Dean said we need to create a plan for the week ahead. The second you initiate a plan, you've created some kind of gap between what your target is and what the week is ahead. And during that gap, dopamine gets engaged to get you to engage in that habit. And the problem with modern lifestyle is it's instant gratification. We've collapsed down this gap between hard work and feeling good. You can literally hop on a Netflix show immediately, scroll through social media, and your brain is squirting this dopamine. So you're basically getting satiated without actually having to do the work to go and pursue things. So I'm a big believer of doing things to optimize dopamine production. Here are some specifics. 1, exercise. Exercise itself raises dopamine. 2, cold plunging and cold exposure raises dopamine more than if someone takes a hit of cocaine. Like, really, you get in a cold plunge, you get more dopamine in your brain than if you did cocaine. It's persistent for 4 hours. 3, eating foods that are high in L-tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid precursor that your brain uses for dopamine. I think that's essential. 4, sleep. Prioritizing sleep is essential. You miss sleep, your motivation and willpower to be able to crush your workouts goes down substantially. And also something that I've been using is finding sustainable stimulants. So a lot of us have coffee, and that works for like morning motivation. You have your cup of joe, you're ready to go tackle work or a workout. Another thing I've been using is I've been telling people about this, but I've been using some cacao. This is a kind of stimulant that's a little gentler than coffee, but it actually has a lot of different components like theobromine that increases your motivation. I took some before this podcast, kind of gives me a little bit of a bump and a boost. And I think it's good to have tools like this that you can deploy throughout the day for different kinds of times. And so the neurochemistry is important, I would say. And if you find that you're wasting time on social media, you're in the habit of scrolling on your phone, if you get that out of your life, you'll be more consistent with your workouts. I promise you. It's just like, it's kind of part of the deal.
Yeah. I was just over here. I was looking at my bookcase. I was going to pick a few of the books that I really like for habit formation. I think there's 3 basic ones that people can really benefit from. The first one is called Power of Habit, and this is by Charles Duhigg. It goes into the science of building habits, and it talks a little bit about what Dr. A was talking about with dopamine and how that structures into that. The other one, it's a really popular book. I think it's maybe the #1 selling book currently. It's called Atomic Habits. It has created a massive movement behind it. It has every single sentence in that book is potentially life-changing. It's an amazing book. So Atomic Habits is #2. And then the third book I'd recommend is Tiny Habits. This is by a Stanford behavioral psychologist. It's not as popular as Atomic Habits, but where Atomic Habits doesn't get as much on the science and the data behind it, Tiny Habits really goes a lot into the data behind it. And it also comes out with a lot of strategies that have been proven by data. So that's what I'll say there. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the motivation and consistency factor. So going back to, you asked me about reasons for motivation. So I'll talk about my own reasons, and I'll also talk about some of the reasons that pop up in my community, within the Manful Yoga community. So my reason is because I want to do what I physically want to do for as long as possible. My reason for that is because I want to be a badass in terms of my exercise, in terms of how I look, how I feel. And I want to be that because for me, that is how I feel open to feel worthy to being loved. So that is really deep. But that for me, recognizing that that is how exercise fits in and how being healthy fits into my overall desire to feel accepted and safe is really powerful. So if you are working on figuring out what your clarity is on your motivation, and you haven't gotten to something that is really profound or personally meaningful, something that kind of gives you the shivers or makes you feel, vulnerable talking about it, then you probably haven't gotten to that real deep reason yet. Other reasons would be, being around for your family. So looking at your kids, thinking about when they're going to have kids, or if they already have kids, if you're a grandparent, and then wanting to be able to take care of them, to be on the floor with them and play with them. That's a big reason. Another reason is just being around to take care of the kids, like thinking about what would happen if I wasn't here to take care of my kids, right? That's a big one. Another one is a desire to live independently and at a high quality of life. So all of us probably have older people in our lives who have not taken very good care of themselves, who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and are really struggling, right? They can't do things unassisted. You don't want to be a burden on somebody else. So that's the other thing that we really see in our community. So I would really encourage you, and this is something that Dr. A encourages everyone within the Fit Father Project as well, but to get really clear on what that motivation is and to be able to use that as motivation, as fuel to do these things that you need to do to live that healthy lifestyle so you can live that why.
I want to say something too, because Dean shared his personal aspects of like how physical capacity and ability to do things leads him to self-love and acceptance. And for me, as a man who is very like religiously and spiritually oriented, like that's my deepest orientation. If you resonate with me like that, you have any kind of faith, I think one of the deepest things you can do is tie your health to your faith. Like I believe that I am expressing God when my body is healthy and aligned. I believe that when I'm living this life, I'm life energy that is a blessing and a gift through this body temple is being shown to myself and to the world. So if you have a spiritual orientation in your life that is present and strong for you, it's probably deep. And if so, like tie that to your physical health. It's like stacking these identities. And also another thing that Dean and I will talk about a lot is for consistency is stacking your habits too. I was thinking like I just spent a couple days with Dean and we were going through a bunch of exercises, mobility work. And I was reflecting like, man, I don't do this stuff on a daily basis as much as I'd like to, but I have the time. And I'm like, okay, so what if I'm sitting down with my daughter and she's watching a show on the TV or something? Like I could be foam rolling during that time. I could be doing man flow exercise during that time. So like the leisure time that we have where we're just sitting on our butt is a perfect time to be habit stacking, at least your foam rolling and your mobility. And what's cool about that is the second you actually start doing things beyond what you're doing right now. So you're at this level, which means you're eating pretty well, you're exercising pretty consistently, but you want to be doing these things. You want to be getting cold shower, you want to be mobility, you want to be cold plunging. The second you start adding more into there on a regular, consistent basis, you have up leveled. You've up leveled to the point where you feel more excitement. When you say, I'm not just doing like, okay, I'm actually crushing it. And your experience of crushing it is that you're doing more than your default level has been. And over time, your default level can rise. And so I'm thinking about habit stacking is a great way to do that, to at least get the quick things like mobility that can be done in tandem with leisure time with family.
Yeah. And the way that habit stacking work is, we kind of talked about it, but the way that it works really well is you plug it into something that already exists. So you're not looking at creating a habit. You're not looking at creating a routine from scratch. You're looking at your life and you're seeing where are there habits that already exist, and are there things that I want to do now that will fit easily into those? So some factors there would be theme related. So ideally, if you want to insert something that's meditative or stress relieving or mindful, you're finding an activity that already exists that theme of mindfulness can work with it. It can also be related to environment. If you want to start, let's say you want to start, exercising in your basement in the mornings, but in the mornings you're already in your car, right? That's a different environment. It's a terrible example, but the point is that you want to stack habits that occur in the same location, right? So proximity is important here. So those are some things to consider with stacking, but like a few examples of that would be, so something I talk about a lot, and we were just talking about this morning, is how if your goal is to improve flexibility, then combining what we do with Manful Yoga, the active mobility work that we're doing, combining that with foam rolling is going to help yield dramatic improvements. So if you can think, when I go into the garage, when I go into my living room to do yoga, I will foam roll for 5 minutes, right? So you get specific, you have a plan, you say it to yourself. And one thing that's even cooler, here's a little hack that you can try, is you can actually practice those habits. Meaning you go into, so you think about what that habit looks like, and you actually walk into wherever you do yoga, you get out your foam roller and you start foam rolling for about 10 seconds. And you say, okay, I just trained that habit. And then you go back out to whatever room you normally come from. And then you walk back into the living room. You go back to your foam roller. And so you practice, you kind of get yourself into this groove of, okay, when I go in here, when I'm about to do yoga, I will do foam rolling. So you can actually practice habits, not just in the way that you normally would do them, but also practice them to kind of establish the groove and that repetition and make it more automatic. So that's what I got.
That's great advice on building habits. I also want to talk about like the process of breaking them. I think we get into these default modes, and I'll speak like reflectively, but I'm sure if you can resonate and let me know. Like Ben has a great one: balance on each foot for 1 minute while brushing your teeth. Great. Next time you drive in the car and you normally turn on a podcast or music, but yet you want to practice more mindfulness, do nothing. No sound, nothing. Just breathe through your nose, feel the steering wheel be inside your body. Like when you're taking a walk, if you're used to doing one thing, do something else. But what I guys want to say is, like, I don't know about you, but I bring my phone to the bathroom a lot. Let's say I'm taking a poop. I have the phone in my bathroom. I might be playing a game of chess or scrolling or watching a YouTube video. What would be really good there is actually to break that loop intentionally by like making sure that that phone or the default mode that you normally do doesn't happen. Like it stops, it stays away, and you're giving yourself more spaciousness. What I guess I've learned from a productivity and a health standpoint is that more is not always better. In fact, I think health is kind of like a natural condition that happens when the right elements are there, not too many, not too few, just like the basics. And I think heading into the new year and next year, the answer is not to do more and more and more. It's probably to identify the things that are actually important and then to give yourself more cognitive bandwidth to do less. And every time we do little unconscious things like checking the phone or reading the next article or looking at the next news blip, we're just taking up RAM and bandwidth that could be used for more important extra things. And then we end up feeling overwhelmed. And then we end up like snapping at our family or our friends because we're a little overwhelmed. So what if we had that mindset of really like protecting our bandwidth like crazy? And when you start your day by protecting your bandwidth, aka like the morning routine, you tend to have a great day. I know my worst days are when I get up and I'm more reactive and I'm immediately like on the phone and doing stuff like that. So I just want to say this process of intentionally like doing less and cutting out some of those default habits in those little times. So are you in the habit when you're in the kitchen making food that the TV's always on? Or, something's always playing on a phone? Like, what if you just like took things away? And Dean, you did a retreat recently where you said something really cool, where you went on a retreat and you wanted to have nobody else's thinking and inputs. Mm-hmm. So no podcasts, no one else's books. Right. You just went to a room with some myofascial tools and a journal, and you just sat with yourself. Like, yeah, dude, that's powerful. Like, speak into that a little bit in relation to this habits motivation concept.
Yeah. So I think I'm a firm believer that it is we just live in a time where it is incredibly easy to not be mindful. It's incredibly easy to distract ourselves. So whenever we're slightly uncomfortable, we grab our phone. Whenever we feel like we need to get more done, like, as men in particular, right? We feel that need to be productive in order to be valued. We get our phone out. Oh, I'm going to go through email, right? I'm going to do a little bit of work. So there are countless ways for us to distract ourselves, and it takes a lot of effort to be mindful about removing those distractions, to give ourselves time to actually be present with our own thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so the answer to that is not willpower alone. It is creating environments where that mindfulness can be facilitated. Yeah. So, the number one thing that's going to prevent you from being mindful is your phone. Now, don't put your phone down right now because we're trying to help you. But in general, you want to have your phone not as accessible as it is now. So, some things that I do, I don't have my phone in my bedroom. I don't have my phone when I'm with my family. I usually put it in the charger and I leave it in another part of the room. If I am in an environment where I want to be more mindful, I put my phone just slightly further away from me. Some more radical things that you could do. You could put you could unplug the TV so that you have to go plug it in if you want to use it. You could hide your remote. There's little things that you can do to kind of make activities that suck mindfulness, to make those more difficult. So if you can remove your access to it, the thing about some of those activities is that they really don't yield that much benefit. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like, I could be sitting on the couch, mm-hmm. and if my phone is just slightly out of reach, I'm like, not worth it. Because like the amount of the reward that you get from it is so little. So if you can remove distractions from yourself, make it so that you're not only it's not whether or not you have the choice to do it, it's that you don't even have the ability to do it. So I think that is vastly important. To speak to specifically about my experience at retreat. So when I was able to be with myself and my own thoughts, there were certain themes that I realized that I needed more of in my life. And this might be a good opportunity for you in the new year. I've actually got a whole podcast somewhere in the universe that will go into some more detail. The summary here is I basically asked myself basic questions about how did last year go? What went well? What didn't go well? What do I want to do more of? If you can ask yourself those basic questions and give yourself the presence of mind to be able to answer those thoroughly, and then go back and look at those themes. So for me, one of the big themes that came up was this idea of creating space. I recognized that I was just trying to be productive. I was trying to multitask. I was not having space between tasks, not enough time for me to process things, to actually be present. And so I made it my goal. My first goal of 2024 was creating space. So this is something that I think can be incredibly valuable. For me, it was definitely helpful. It just reminds me, okay, I'm going to create space between events. I'm not going to overload my calendar with things. And I think that, what we talked about before of this idea of not aiming to be as productive as possible, but being much more selective with the things that really matter. I think that can really help. So creating space.
I have something on this. One of the persons I consider like a mentor, hasn't actually directly mentored me, but the person I look up to, most like in terms of humans that have lived, is a man named Walter Russell. You can look up Walter Russell's life. Prolific artist, sculptor, scientist. At the time, they said he lived 5 lifetimes in one. They called him the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. And here was his process. Every night before he went to bed, he viewed bedtime as like a sacred entering into another state of awareness. He would ask himself, like basically go through a day review. He'd sit down, close his eyes, go through a day review and ask himself, what things did I do today that basically added or generated energy? And what things did I do that allowed energy to dissipate and leak? And his fundamental concept was that we're all either creating or dissipating energy. Every single action is either building us up, meaning we're eating nutritious food. We're making a conscious choice about getting the work out of it. And these are adding life energy. And the dissipating actions would be, oh, we skipped this. Oh, we said a mean word to a friend. Oh, we told this lie. Oh, we were lazy here. Oh, we deviated in this way. And those are leaks of power. And he basically said that the reason he's been so productive is he accumulated power, and using self-reflection every single night is a really cool way to do that. And what he said is basically, now we're not just working on like our lives, working on ourselves as like the machine that's running our life. We are going through the process of becoming better in our operation. And every day we can slowly iterate and make that better. One other thing I think is cool is the idea of boundaries. Boundaries are powerful. And I think from a nutrition perspective, boundaries are maybe like everything. They're like the fundamental framework beneath it. Like once you figure out what healthy foods work for you and all that, boundaries are key. Some boundaries that I hold is I practice boundaries with fasting and feeding. There are times when I fast, like I try not to eat too late at night. I sometimes do 24-hour fasts, 3-day fasts. That is flexing this idea of creating a boundary that enables you to practice like, I guess habits and control. I do not believe in snacking. Like I'm like snacking is like, okay, but I think anyone who is just unconsciously snacking all the time is probably not going to be at the weight and body fat that they want, unless they have the metabolism of Dean Pullman, in which case it's actually the plan of eating 6 times a day. But like in between meals, like you eat, give your body a discrete boundary period where you like don't stimulate blood sugar, you allow yourself to rest. And like that creates a structure and a rhythm throughout things versus this kind of like amorphous, I go with what I'm feeling in any given moment. Like that's kind of the antithesis of like health, which is based on consistency and structure. So boundaries are great in that respect. And they actually give you freedom once you adopt them and you see how nourishing they are. Boundaries are not restrictions. They're conditions that you can self-impose that gives you more life energy, which ultimately gives you freedom. Because I suppose when it comes to the things we put in our mouth, we're either trading short-term pleasure for like long-term pain. Like the foods that taste good are creating inflammation, blood sugar dysregulation. And I'm not saying don't have these, right? We have this idea of having free meals. That is a boundary. I've said during this period of time when I'm going out with friends and family, I'm having whatever I want. And that's built in, it's proactive. But the vast majority of the time, I think viewing food through that lens of what's actually adding me and giving me more life energy, it makes you look at, it's not actually worth it. Like, we just had some Mexican food. Like, you could go ahead and eat the chips so easily, but you're going to regret it later. And the more you can remind yourself of that regret, because it's not good for you, the better off you'll be.
Yeah. It makes me think. So, by the way, you guys should be following us on social media. If you're not, we do post content, Instagram, Facebook. Are you on TikTok too?
No.
Do you not TikTok?
Fit Father might be.
Okay. So, and we just recorded a bunch of videos of us at the grocery store, like walking around and talking about certain foods that we like, certain things that you should avoid, certain things that you could look for. And I wanted to do something fun with this too. So we went into the baked goods section, and I looked around, and I got my phone out, and I said, all right, Dr. Ray, you pick any of these foods, what would you eat? And he said, nothing. I would pick none of these. And I liked his answer because, I also sometimes feel like sometimes I feel like I actually eat unhealthy just to make it seem like I'm more normal. If when you spend a lot of time when you're not eating, if you spend a lot of time not eating unhealthy food, you come to realize that there is this relationship between unhealthy food and feeling bad afterwards.
Yes.
And you get to the point where you're like, no, I know how that makes me feel, and I don't want to do that. If you are going to eat unhealthy foods, okay, so like talking honestly here, have a good baked good. Like go somewhere that makes really good baked goods. Get something like homemade chocolate chip cookies, right? Or like something that someone made from scratch that doesn't have a bunch of preservatives in it, at least. So if you are going to have something that's delicious, like just do it right. Like don't have a crappy cookie from a prepackaged thing. Like have a good cookie.
And that's a boundary. The underlying belief structure is I only eat unhealthy foods when they're worth it, when it meets some kind of condition of enough quality. Like I go to Italy, I have pasta. Like it's worth it to do it in that context. And that'll keep you on track in a pretty tremendous way. I want to kind of take this from the psychological a little bit maybe to the practical and kind of bang around some topics.
Yeah.
Seasons are changing right now. We are here right now recording this in Austin, Texas. We had a cool day. Leaves are starting to change colors. This is a time to start eating seasonally. Like it's amazing. Every year we live with our bodies, we are connected to the natural cycle of the seasons moving through. And that means the produce and the fruits and the vegetables and the things that are available during that season and the recipes we do are changing too. And I want to suggest that to keep your nutrition really fresh and really, I guess, affordable too and fun, to start having seasonal recipes that you use here. So now is the time, if you're eating fruit as a part of your diet, the stone fruits are in season. Eat more apples, eat more pears. I'm eating a lot more pomegranates. Those are in season in Arizona. Like eat the things that are seasonal when they come in. Like now is the time to be baking more squash, doing, like different kinds of butternut squash, acorn squash, start doing more stews, like getting the crock pot out or the Instapot and throwing the root vegetables and the carrots and the broth, doing these warmer things. Like it makes nutrition really fun when you have a plan that kind of comes with you seasonally. Like you don't have to have chicken, rice, and avocado year round. Like it's a good default meal. Like that's cool. But I suggest a seasonal aspect. You're going to get a variety of different kinds of nutrients, typically the foods that are more affordable. And it kind of keeps it fun because you're going to get excited when it comes summer again and there's fresh watermelon and cantaloupe and maybe you want to do a summer salad. So play the seasonal game, because this is also subtly saying that I am accepting and understanding that all of life is moving in cycles. Like the body is moving in cycles. The seasons are moving in cycles. The activities that you do move in cycles. There are going to be periods of your time when you want to build muscle, periods of your time when you want to move mobility, periods of your time where it's cold outside and you want more warming food. So I think play on the seasonal aspect. That's going to be really great. And Inside Fit Father, we're going to do a lot more seasonal recipes coming soon.
Yeah, something that I look to in terms of seasonal food is it's really interesting to. I used to never look at nutritional labels. I think I only started really doing that when I was probably in my mid 20s. That was back when I didn't have kids and I had the time to just go into the grocery store after a night of going out and just kind of stare at the same label for about 10 minutes because I really didn't have the energy to do anything else. But that was when I first started looking at nutritional labels and looking at, okay, where does food come from? And when you start getting curious about that and you look at, oh, it looks like these avocados are from Peru, or oh, it looks like this meat is, it looks like it's packaged to look like it's from the United States, But then you look closer and you're like, oh, this is from Australia. That's interesting. So when you start to get more curious about food and look at like where it's actually from, typically you do want to get things as close from home as possible. Definitely want to get organic, but you do want to get foods that are closer to home if you can. And so when you start to look at produce, for example, there's I can't remember which month it is, but grapefruits in Texas, for some reason, they're absolutely delicious. They taste way better than other grapefruits. And so for a few months, grapefruits were in season and they were absolutely delicious. Tons of vitamin C. When I was having a couple of those a day, my skin glowed, like I looked a lot better. And so looking at, just looking at where your food comes from, and also just kind of being curious and aware of, it looks like these are in season.
Yes.
I'm going to go get these, versus, oh yeah, it looks like it's from South Africa again, because that's where grapefruits are from the rest of the time of the year. So
yes,
I think that's something to be aware of, and just be curious about like where your food comes from. And that's something that you don't necessarily have you don't necessarily have to have a doctorate to be able to do that, right? You can just look and be like, oh, this is where it's from. Cool.
Yeah, and it looks really good. Like, this is something that I do when I'm looking at a bunch of produce at a store. You look for the thing that looks the most vibrant and the most fresh, meaning it has the highest water content. It seems like it pops in terms of color. Like, these things that we're perceived, it's like, whoa, that is really vibrant. That looks healthy. Like, we are perceiving the visual stimulus from the fruit that is concentrated color due to phytonutrients and due to like water content that makes it feel plump. So those are actually like the healthier things too. So that's pretty cool. I guess one other thing that's been on my mind is, I was telling Dean this, I think every generation had like a theme of the kind of like toxicity. Like we used to put asbestos in some of the home preparations, and we had like lead pipes. In today's day and age, we are in the age of plastic. And we're going to see more and more and more people talking about plastic chemicals being endocrine disruptors. They're finding plastic when they're doing autopsies on people in pretty much every major organ. And a lot of these plastics are cancer causing. A lot of these plastics decrease testosterone. A lot of them bind to estrogen receptors and are linked to certain kinds of cancers. And I'll say this just straight up. If you are currently drinking plastic water bottles, like, cut that shit out of your life, like, now. It would be a huge, huge improvement. It's one of the greatest sources of microplastics in our diets. You should be drinking out of glass or out of a stainless steel Manflow Yoga water bottle like this. And I also recommend you get really high quality filtered water. Like, I just think water is such a huge input. We should be snobs with our water if we really care about health. Like, all of our cells are filled with water, and water is the great solvent that so many things dissolve into. And in municipal water supplies, like, they're not necessarily filtering out a lot of the crap. There's often chlorines, there's often fluoride. In Arizona, there's arsenic. There's a whole bunch of other chemicals, and like a lot of them are industrial solvents that have just kind of like gotten into the environment. These things stress your system in a bad way. So like, get really clean on those things. And I recommend also, like, we're going to see the plastic thing. Okay, so like Gore-Tex is like a company, for example, that makes like water resistant hiking gear. And they are under huge scrutiny right now because they make those water resistant plastics basically that they use with things called PFAS, which are basically like fluorinated plastics. They have fluoride in them, and they're called forever chemicals. They basically cause all sorts of different kinds of cancers. They take thousands of years to degrade. And we're in this kind of boom of realizing that all this industrial progress we've made is kind of poisoning the environment. So there's an aspect of health once you get consistent with exercise, once you're eating healthier, is to like clean up your environment. And that means certainly water, in my opinion. It also means like maybe getting an air filter in your home. It also means, I guess those are key things. Maybe getting better cleaning products in your home. Because like, if you want to be healthy, all these things are input for the body. What you put on your skin is an input in your body. What you drink is an input on your body. Your food's an input on your body. Your air is an input. And like, we go to like a fresh mountain cabin and we smell that real air and we're like, is this what air is supposed to be like? It's so clean. So I think these are just other aspects that are important for health because they are stressors, and doesn't mean you get cancer, but some people are more susceptible, and it's possible. Toxins are a real deal.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I know investing in water quality was something that I did as soon as I moved into our house a couple of years ago. I think it's probably less than $2,000, maybe $1,500. I can't remember how much it is, but at least in Texas, that's how much it is. But that's such a worthy investment. And then make sure that you have someone come out once a year to actually look at it and treat it, because it does get stuff in the filter that can get stuck, that can make the water quality lower than you want it to be. I think that also getting air purifiers is really important. And
you have a bunch in your home. I've seen like at least 2 or 3.
I have, yes. I probably have. Yeah. I have 4. I have one upstairs for my kids, I have one in the living room, like a really big one that can have like ultra mode if I wanted to. We have one in our bedroom. So I'm very I have a lot of air purifiers. And then we also have dogs. So I know it because if I don't have those things on, or if someone turns them off, I would actually start sneezing.
Yeah.
And I would look around and be like, who unplugged the air filters, because my allergies are going crazy right now. And then switching your AC filters.
Yeah.
Like these are little basic things, right? But they really do make a difference.
And allergies are not just an inconvenience. It's not just like it's annoying to sneeze and have a runny nose. That is your immune system literally reacting to something it perceives as a foreign antigen, mounting an immune response where it's releasing histamine and other inflammatory cytokines that is taxing your system. Like, yeah, I understand we live in a practical world. We're around a whole bunch of different things. But like perfectly, if the body was not being assaulted by all these different little things, some of those conscious food choices, other those environmental allergens, our body would have so much more energy to repair, to have clarity of thinking. Like people who have toxicities and different poisonings from multiple chemical toxicities, from mold exposure, which is a huge one depending on where you live, the symptoms are joint pain, brain fog, low energy. And so like if you're experiencing any of these, it's very possible that cleaning up your immediate environment will relieve some stress on your body. It's also another case for exercise and sweating. Like sweating is a great detoxification. It's also a great case for eating fiber from fruits and vegetables. Fibers bind stuff in the GI tract and help excrete things out of the body. So we need to detox. Like it's a real thing. And it could be as simple as a healthy diet, regular sweating and exercise, clean water and clean air. But if there's something here you haven't been doing, consider upgrading that.
Yeah. So we're about 35 minutes in here. So I just want to start inviting people to start putting up some questions, and we'll start kind of picking those out and going through those one by one as we continue through this. So
here's a fun game. I'm thinking a lot for motivation of my health in terms of like brain health, cognitive health. Because like, yeah, I do want to be strong when I'm 70. I'd love to be able to rip out some pull-ups and stuff like that. But I also want to be like sharp as a tack, because that's going to give me the ability to continue to do deep work. And part of that is using your brain in new and different ways. So here's a simple thing you can do. If you're right-handed at night when you're brushing your teeth, start brushing your teeth with your left hand. You're working a completely different motor pattern than you normally did. Dean was just sitting here for a second. He was balancing on one foot, like doing a little bit of like a balance challenge to activate your body. Picking up a musical instrument can be one of the greatest things you can do for overall brain health. It works the cerebellum, keeps your coordination really good. And another plug for yoga and meditation. Found out Dean plays the what is the harmonica. Yeah. So that's great, right? A little fun there. And meditation. I could not say this more. Whatever that word means for you, some kind of mindfulness practice where you sit still, close your eyes, and get present with your body and anything that comes up is essential for longevity and health. And they found that people who are in their 50s who meditate regularly have the same brain connections and brain activity as someone who's in their 20s. So it's like you can have a healthier brain by actually doing meditation. I do it twice a day. And it can be as little as 5 minutes, but I do it in the morning. I do it in the evening. These are bookends for my day. And I have very sharp, intellect, sharp cognitive health, and it's only gotten better. What's this? A good book?
Happiness Hypothesis.
Okay.
This is a good one. There's a section on meditation in this. So this is a good book.
Cool. I'm also now a bigger believer in low intensity cardio. I think in terms of our programming, like strength training is like foundational, get that in. That really feels like a workout. Mobility work, foundationing, like certainly do that. But like low intensity cardio, meaning you're getting your heart rate elevated, but you and I could still maintain a conversation. You're breathing through your nose, is one of the greatest ways to keep your brain healthy with age. That gentle cardiovascular activity, which could be brisk walk with the dogs. It could be spending 30 to 40 minutes on cardio equipment once or twice a week is enough to get all that circulation benefit. And we have someone here say protein. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like in terms of nutrition, like when you're setting up your meal planning, basically try to prioritize protein throughout the day. Maintains muscle mass when you age. Dean, how much protein do you target for a day for yourself personally?
Probably 150 to 200.
Okay. And I'm probably more like the 125 to 150, which practically means if you're having 2-3 meals, around 45 to 50 grams in a meal. If you slam a shake in the morning, like Dean and I often do shakes in the morning, there you go, 40 to 50 grams right there. If you have dinner with a main protein serving, chances are you're getting another 50 grams right there. And I think it's easy to nickel and dime your way to the other like 30 to 50 grams through snacks, through whatever lunch you had, etc. So protein, very important. And what I'd say on the protein too, now that I'm kind of on this kick of talking about clean protein sources, like if you eat higher up on the food chain, meaning you're eating like, big fish or, grass-fed or beef, I guess you say, the quality matters. One should only eat protein. Furco, I suppose there are people that believe that today. From my depth of medical research, I believe that microbiome diversity is phenomenal. I believe that there are certain fibers that are massively biocompatible. I believe there are phenomenal flavonoids and phytochemicals in certain kinds of plants that create a good hormetic effect and are strong for the body. I believe that there's a whole concert of different foods that humans are really good at having, and a balanced diet is the best approach. But I also respect the cool thing with nutrition is we all get to do what we feel works for us. And I don't think there's necessarily one right answer. So yeah.
Let's talk that cardio thing again, low intensity cardio. So yeah, you've probably heard a lot about the idea of getting in 10,000 steps a day. 10,000 steps a day is a great milestone to aim for, but realistically, you might not be able to do that, but even 6,000 steps a day, 8,000 steps a day can be really beneficial. Juliet and Kelly Starrett came out with a book called Built to Move, Built to Last, Built to Move, Built to Last, one or the other. But one of their main things in there is just about the importance of walking. And I can't remember the exact statistic, but when you can walk 6,000 steps per day, your overall risk of mortality goes down drastically. Like it's something like 60%. And then if you go up to 8,000 steps a day, it gets even higher. 10,000 steps a day, even higher. If you're doing 12,000 steps a day, it goes down something like 85%. I think it is 85 or even, It's really high. So walking is incredibly helpful. If you're not already walking, so something I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, I started opening up my calendar, doing some one-on-one video calls, just kind of figuring out, okay, what's missing from your workout program right now. And one thing that I try to get a lot of people to do more of is walking, right? If you're not getting into the habit of going for a walk on a regular basis, 1, 2, maybe 3 walks per day, there's something missing there that can really help. Not just from that, low intensity cardiovascular standpoint, but also from this standpoint of, are you giving your mind time to process things? When you go to walk, when you just go for a walk and you don't take your phone with you, it gives your mind time to process things. It gives you time to reflect, kind of like Dr. A was talking about earlier. What is working well for me? Like, what did I enjoy about today? Or what did I not really feel good about today? What was sapping my energy? And my theme of creating space, I think that, again, the more that you can do to create space, to create time for reflection, to create time for you to be with your own thoughts and be okay with your own thoughts. I think that's the big struggle, is just having the mental fitness to be okay with your own thoughts. So, and I think walking does a really good job of that, not only, but also satisfying, those cardiovascular benefits. So.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of distraction. It's like movement with processing, and it shifts your nervous system from sympathetic into parasympathetic, where all the healing happens, the digestion happens, where health happens. Just time outside is so key. We have a couple of good questions. David asks, what about red light therapy while meditating? That would be a powerful habit stack. Like I think the new frontiers of medicine we're going to see so many people moving into, and a lot of new research, is all sorts of light therapy. So the visible light spectrum, red is the lowest, and then we have violet on the highest end of the visible spectrum. Every segment of that has benefit. They're showing that green light can help heal wounds on the skin. Blue light is obviously very activating for our eyes and gets our reaction times shorter and gets us very activated. Red light is very, very therapeutic. It works on the mitochondria. It increases blood flow. And then the infrared spectrum that we can't see below that is really great. And there are some new lights now that are infrared. They have red and infrared. If you can shine that on your body, you're going to get health benefits from that. But also sunshine gives you that as well. Like sunshine light itself emitted from the sun is about 45% infrared. And if you get out there in the morning time before like the UV index is really high, you get a lot of great infrared light. I have been using my infrared sauna more recently. I did a podcast with Sunlighten, the company that makes great infrared saunas. They inspired me. I'm using it constantly. Dean will show you. He has one over here on the side. He's got a sauna over there. So anyways, red light, infrared light, very, very good. I'm a fan. Another question is, what should be target for carbs, fat, protein as percentages of calories? I'm going to have Dean and I both answer this. The way I would like set up someone's macros is one, set your protein target first. So like if we're aiming, let's just say for the 150 grams of protein as a target, 4 calories per gram of protein, that's 600 calories. So now we ask, how many calories do you think you should be eating per day? So, let's say it's 2,000 calories is the target there. That means you have 1,400 extra calories to get. I would say the first thing is to prioritize healthy fats. I think that's a really good thing. They're calorie dense. So if we throw in around 100 grams of healthy fats there, that's 900 calories right there. So now, we basically have the remainder can be carbohydrates. I would say as a macro breakdown though, for most people, it's probably going to be around 30% protein, probably like 30 to 40% fats, and the remainder carbohydrates. As your exercise intensity goes up, your demands, or you want to build more muscle, having higher carbohydrate intake post-workout can really help you. It's good for filling out glycogen. It's good if you're training and you're lifting, you're taking creatine. But for everyday health and maintenance, I think the carbs can be on a slightly lower side. You can bias the healthy fats and the protein. Dean, what's your take on this?
So I'm going to go the other route, because personally for me, like I've never been interested in tracking my macros. I think I've done it. I think I did it for a 1 or 2 week period where I was just kind of curious. And so I did track the macros. But for me, what's important is being really in tune with my body and kind of understanding what it needs. So practicing and developing that intuition of, oh, I can feel that I'm hungry right now. Why am I hungry? Okay, I worked out a little bit harder than I have in the past. I've been really consistent with my workouts. Okay, so it makes sense that I'm hungry. Good. That means that I will go and eat. And I usually do. I usually will. Really simple for me. I prioritize eating healthy sources of protein. That's for me. That's what I aim for. And then secondary to that is going to be eating more vegetables, eating healthy fats. If I'm about to work out, or if I have just recently worked out, then I'll be a bit more liberal with how much carb intake I have. But for me, that's really simple, right? Protein, vegetables, healthy fats, and then carbs before and after a workout. So for me, that works well. And then also, if I haven't been working out a lot and I notice, oh, I'm kind of hungry right now, but I just ate, I wonder why that is. Water, right? So this is the other thing. If you're hungry and you know that you don't need food right now, it could be that you just need some water. So have a glass of water, go do something for 10 minutes, and then reassess after a few minutes. Oh, that's what I needed. I needed water. So I think most of us aren't drinking enough water. Usually my goal is to drink about 100 ounces of water a day. If I take my giant Yeti, this is about 46 ounces. So I know that if I can drink 2 of these, then I'm pretty close to that. But most of us aren't drinking enough water. So if you are tracking your macros, it would also be a good idea to also track your water intake.
Cool. Some questions. We have a question about grounding mats we'll get to in a second. Jeff, one of our Fit Father members, asked about carb cycling. He's like, this idea that you can have low carb days, medium carb days, high carb days. And when should you do these? If I'm doing a strength training workout versus like a metabolic Apex 10 workout. Here's my take on this. I think per Dean's plan, like carb cycling kind of happens like somewhat naturally. So let's say you're following the Fit Father lifestyle and you do a 24-hour fast once per week. That could be a low carb day. That's inherently low carb cycling, especially if you have a dinner that's like lower in carb in its nature, a little more protein veggie style. That's automatically like a low carb day. Typically better to do around rest days. On days I've lifted, like 45 minutes of weightlifting is a wonderful time post-workout to increase the carbohydrates. Like after you do heavy strength training, you activate those muscles, the glucose receptors that suck up sugar on your muscles, they come to the surface. Like your muscles basically become sponges for sugar, which is a really cool experience because you can have more carbohydrates. They preferentially get shuttled into the muscles that actually help with recovery. So on a day you're doing heavy lifting, that's more like traditional strength training, would be a day you might want to go medium or higher on the carbohydrates. On days you're doing like the Apex 10, for example, or more metabolic resistance training, I would keep that as just a baseline lower carb day, which for most in the Fit Father plan is like lower carbs at breakfast, a perfect plate at dinner, which typically includes around 40 to 50 grams of carbs, and maybe lunch, if you're doing a salad or a sandwich or a bowl, has 30 to 40. So you're still kind of coming around this 100 to 150 grams is like the baseline. And then you can spike on those weightlifting days. If you do fasting, you automatically get carb cycling. But it is a really powerful thing for the body to go through periods of having plenty to being in scarcity. because in both conditions of plenty and scarcity, the body has to activate different metabolic machinery to compensate. Like during fasting, when we're in scarcity for the body, a lot of these pathways that enhance longevity turn on to break down fat, to get rid of senescent cells. So we want to have emptiness. At the same time, you want to drive anabolic response to exercise. You throw calories and carbs and creatine and protein and amino acids after training, your body's like, heck yeah, let me go into building mode. And so I'd say basically the time after strength training workouts, higher on the carbohydrates is good. Dean, anything to share on that, or cool?
If you just had a big workout, you get to eat a lot more of what you might not be able to eat. So yeah.
I wouldn't do that heavy after cardio days though, just FYI. Like I don't think people can use exercise as an excuse just to overeat. So that's a thing. So Daniel asked about grounding mats. I am a fan of earthing and grounding. And if you still want to be convinced about this, you can read a book by Clint Ober called, I believe it's Earthing. It might also be called Grounding, but Clint Ober is the author. There's also a lot of great stuff online checking this out. And the fundamental premise is that the earth itself has a negative electric charge. Like when we're in contact with the earth directly, we suck up electrons from the metallic earth's crust that helps balance our bodies. And we've heard of this concept of antioxidants. Like we just have an idea that those are things in foods that are like good for us. What antioxidants do is they donate electrons to compounds in our body that are damaged and create these things called free radicals. Free radicals are basically unstable compounds that bump into things. They create damage and inflammation. By providing an antioxidant like vitamin C, it can donate electrons to neutralize things. Turns out the earth does the same thing. When we're in contact with the earth, we're basically sucking up electrons from the earth by completing the circuit, and our bodies just get benefit from this. My take on this right now is that actual earthing, like feet on soil in grass, is primary and best. I do own some earthing mats. When I work, I have one plugged in. I think the concerns of this are like dirty electricity and making sure your outlets are actually clean. They have plugs so you can check this stuff out. It's probably like net beneficial, but I actually think getting your feet on some barefoot is very helpful. The Tour de France cycling team, in one of the Tour de France races, they actually slept in earthing mats and grounding bags, and they found that the team recovered faster, and a lot of athletes are doing this for recovery. So it's something to consider.
Cool. Yeah, I used to live right next to a park, and something that I did in the mornings was I would get outside in the morning with my dogs, and I would take my shoes off and just walk around in the grass. And there's definitely something to be said for getting out and earthing in the morning. I think that's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
Get your feet in contact with the ground. Also, just from a overall foot health perspective, a lot of guys probably watching this, a lot of you guys probably watching this, spend a lot of your days in shoes. You know, if you're at an office where you have to wear kind of really restrictive dress shoes, then, you know, I get that that's kind of required from what we do. But if you can start to figure out where are there opportunities in your life where you can take your shoes off and go barefoot and start to reestablish, you know, oh, that's what it feels like for my feet to be in contact with the ground, while also getting, you know, some of these earthing benefits. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
If you train at home, if you exercise at home, start training more barefoot. If you're normally exercising in workout shoes that are like running shoes, are really cushy, you're actually going to perform a lot better when you get out of that cushion that's dissipating your ability to translate force into the ground. Mm-hmm. So that's something. Your balance will improve. Your foot health will improve dramatically. If you have kids and you want to enhance their athletic performance, get them out of shoes, get them to build their arches up, work on a Drilly Jill's barefoot. Like we're supposed to have, it's called technically like toe splay, but the toes should not be crunched. They should be out like that. That is really cool.
Yeah. Foot health, shoe. That's what I tried to say. Shoe related. So there's a lot of shoes now that you can get that are much more reflective of what your foot actually looks like. Mm-hmm. So wide toe box.
Yes.
Zero drop heel, so that your heel isn't unnaturally elevated. Those are some really good places to look. Now it's kind of a process to, if you have really flat feet, if you've had flat feet for a very long time, and you've always worn really supportive shoes, you have maybe custom orthotics, it's hard to go straight from that to flat feet. So if you can be mindful about doing some, the short version of what I'm about to say is, if you can be very mindful about doing some sort of feet, ankle, toe mobility exercises, and then go into barefoot and be mindful about that technique as you're going barefoot for a few minutes, and then go back into your normal shoes, and you can, be less mindful with that. There's a way to kind of, ease the transition of doing that. I wouldn't recommend going full, no supportive barefoot all the time if you are in that position where you have shoes that are really supportive. So you want to ease into that. But yeah, if you're not already barefoot, sometimes I'd start getting into that habit, especially when you're doing yoga. You want to be trying to be barefoot there. Don't wear shoes unless you absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm. Couple other random things, and we do have some more questions coming through. So Dean and I'll be here for a few more minutes to rip some questions. Random stuff that I've started doing that I believe in. I believe that there are certain foods that actually do qualify as superfoods, meaning they have compounds in them that are powerful enough that they create a lot of actions. And when you get these into your body, your health improves. One I've been talking about a lot is to add walnuts to your diet. They're like the best nut by far for many reasons. Many people are deficient in some of the metals like copper that walnuts have. Your health will improve by eating walnuts. The main one I want to bring up right now is broccoli sprouts. Broccoli sprouts. They are loaded in this thing called sulforaphane. You can look it up, sulforaphane, which is one of the best compounds that we know of to protect your DNA, anti-cancer benefits, enhances exercise performance. So when you take sulforaphane and broccoli sprouts post-workout, it actually downregulates this gene called myostatin and increases protein synthesis. So now in my post-workout, I'm doing my superfuel protein, I'm doing some creatine monohydrate, and also getting broccoli sprouts in the mix. This is a new thing, but it's really powerful. So if you can get sprouts into your diet, broccoli sprouts, I highly recommend it. You can buy these from the grocery store, throw it on any perfect plate, on any salad, or do what I do is like realize how important this is. I just sprout them. Like I literally put them in a little container, they sprout, and I constantly have something to pull off of. Second thing is I talk a lot about helping people establish what I consider go-to foods, like finding what your go-to meal is for breakfast, finding what your go-to proteins are. I also think it's a good idea to find your go-to ferment or your go-to probiotic. Like we're learning so much about how important gut health is for immune function, for digestion, for longevity. And I think it's so fitting and powerful that each culture around the world has a natural ferment that came from that place. From Russia, we got kombucha. From the people of Japan, we got koji and natto. In the United States, we have this weird hodgepodge of cultures where we actually don't have like a natural ferment. What I've started to do is I've taken the ferment from the Middle East, kefir, and I make my own at-home kefir. So I got the kefir grains and ferment, and I make it with some coconut milk. And like, I just want to give you a little bit of my mentality. There is a best in slot ferment that you can find. It could be kimchi, it could be sauerkraut, it could be fermented pickles, it could be some kind of yogurt with some active probiotic cultures. But if you can get this as a go-to staple in your life, it can serve you so well. So let's say you do tolerate dairy and you get some kind of fermented yogurt. You throw seasonal fruit in there. Berries are in season, throw that in the yogurt. Pomegranates are in season, throw that in the yogurt. For me, the kefir is amazing. I'm getting it in. My digestive health has never been better. And I know I'm getting these biodiverse gut bacteria strains that are going to keep me healthy long-term. So that's a little tidbit.
Cool. So my nutrition tip for you, practical, is a morning smoothie. So if you guys are already familiar with this, I'm a huge fan of a morning smoothie. Dr. A and I have been talking about this on and off this weekend. So the benefit of a morning smoothie is you are going to get a lot of veggies that you otherwise would not have gotten. Mm-hmm. So, you can make a smoothie taste delicious with, as long as you have strawberries and a banana, you can make that smoothie taste delicious. You can throw a lot of stuff in there. So for example, I made a smoothie this morning. I have 2 handfuls of strawberries. Now this is, again, he was not lying when I say that I have 6 meals a day. For some reason, that's how my body works. I eat a lot of food and I also work out a lot. So, hey, but you can also break this up into smoothies for multiple days. So I've got my 2 handfuls of strawberries. I've got a full banana. I have 2 giant handfuls of spinach. I add on hemp seed. There's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of protein. I add in chia seeds. I add in a scoop of protein powder, unflavored. Sometimes I'll add in some other supplements. And then I put frozen berries on top of that, frozen blueberries, frozen raspberries, blackberries, just a blend that I get from Costco. I blend that up. It fills up the entire Vitamix that I've had for 12 years. Those things last forever. Dr. A's is from sometime in the 1990s. It is rumored. So it's really easy to use that. And it also sets you up for the rest of the day though, right? So this is something that you can rely on that's ready to go, right? You can eat it. So instead of having something unhealthy because you've gotten to that point where you're hungry and you're like, I need some food right now, you've got this smoothie nearby that you can get. And I think the last thing I'll say about that is when you eat smoothies, when you consume smoothies on a regular basis, the gloriousness of an easy poop comes into your world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that if you haven't already experienced the regularity of that, it can be really life-changing. It just makes life, God, it's so easier.
I want to comment on that. Like, so in the nutrition world, you look at like government organizations, they say you should get your 20 to 25 grams of fiber a day. Like, that is laughable. In Dean's morning smoothie he just described, there is probably like almost 20 to 25 grams of fiber in that single thing, maybe even 30 grams. And there's a mix of soluble fiber, which can lower your cholesterol levels and feed your gut bacteria, insoluble fiber, which can build bulk to your stool and get that bowel movements moving. So it's like, by doing that simple habit, you're literally loading in all these nutrients. You're getting so many good things. And honestly, his smoothie tastes really good. Like, you wouldn't think it'd be that delicious. It's rock solid. Highly recommend that. That's like a one go-to thing.
And also don't demonize fruits, right? I think we think fruits, it's got sugar. Like, you need sugar.
I eat a ton of fruit. I eat so much fruit. Like, Dean came and hang out with me at the cabin, and like, he saw me just eat like
cantaloupes. Cantaloupe after cantaloupe. It's just, cantaloupes.
I think it's just a very natural food. You know, I feel fantastic when I eat it. I'm also a huge proponent of eggs of all different kinds. Eggs for brain health, eggs for choline, they're amazing. I do a lot of raw eggs. It's kind of like part of my thing. Those are really great.
Just like Rocky.
Okay, so we got a question. Hey, from Arizona. So I love JR from Arizona. Good to see you, brother. I'll be back in Scottsdale, Arizona tomorrow. Get a quick sample day of eating perfect plate style. Well, okay. So we started off like Dean's example of the smoothie. Another example might be like, I might break my day's fast. So I break the fast with breakfast with a mono serving of fruit. So whatever fruit's seasonal, 2 apples, maybe a pear, or in the summer, it could be like a melon, half of a melon. And then I'll have eggs for that kind of thing. And eggs prepared anyway with maybe a little avocado. So it's not like a traditional perfect plate where half veggies, quarter carb, quarter protein. Breakfast is a little more fluid. For lunch, I think the salad with protein is like a bomb combination. Like, you may have some carbs in there, but you throw protein on greens, you can get that anywhere. You can get a Chipotle bowl that satisfies that. You can probably even go to a fast food restaurant and get that. You can take spring mix and throw it on a plate with any kind of chicken and little vegetables chopped up with olive oil based dressing. Rock solid for lunch. So protein plus greens for lunch, you're set. And then dinner can be more flexible. I think when I just had dinner with Dean's family last night, and we had taco night. So the way we approached that was, okay, what's the protein? Grass-fed ground beef. Okay, what's the carbohydrate? We had some almond flour tortillas and we had some Spanish rice. So like, we basically built a perfect plate around the taco night with some fajita veggies. That's like rock solid. It could also be a little more formulaic. Like, I might be like, okay, I want to have some wild salmon tonight. So oven, salmon goes in. Throw some asparagus in there as well, and maybe throw some purple sweet potatoes in the Instapot. Like, that's cool. But just thinking about from a concept of what is your protein, what's your carbohydrate in dinner, and what's your veggie, and you can build those 3 combinations of things and you're rock solid. But Dean and I were also talking yesterday in the grocery store, like, dinner doesn't have to be fancy. Like, Dean, sometimes you do like a lunch meat dinner, like, speaking to that, because I think that's like a legit thing to talk about, because it's not like every dinner when you're being super health conscious is fancy. Like,
yeah. So a lot of our dinners, so I have 2 kids. One is a girl, she's 1.5. And then my son is 4.5. So they don't like eating a lot of foods. So unfortunately, we're going to feed them stuff that I don't always want to eat. So I find myself in the position a lot of the time where I'm like, okay, well, I need to feed myself. What's an easy way to do this? One of my hacks is just lunch meat, right? So just go get some lunch meat. We kind of walk through this. Be on the lookout for our social media. You'll get to see us, holding up different lunch meats and avoiding people in the grocery store while we film things, which is really cool. But yeah, like an organic oven roasted turkey breast, just really simple, right? So something like that. And then I'll have avocados. And then if I did have a workout that day and I do want to have some carbs, maybe have some sourdough. Maybe I have some sourdough bread. Maybe I have, maybe there's some carbs lying around somewhere. But yeah, like a lot of this is keeping it simple. And then a lot of it is also just having certain go-to meals. So like for me, my wife has recently started doing a lot more of the cooking, just with our current job situations, probably sharing more. Anyways, point being here is she likes to make a lot more variety in her foods. But when I was cooking, when I was choosing a lot of the meals, we had the same 5 meals over and over again. So there wasn't a lot of variety, but I knew what I needed to make, and I had these meals selected that had my protein, that had carbs, that had veggies, that had fats. So it was simple, but it was basic. So
Go to healthy carbs, rapid fire, go. Which ones do you have regularly for dinner?
for me, I'm pretty good with rice.
Okay.
So like rice I can have.
How do you make it? Stovetop, rice cooker?
Yep, stovetop.
Okay.
Easy. Second thing, beans. If I can have beans, that's probably the one that I handle the best. Also, beans have a lot of protein too,
Yeah.
so added plus there. So beans I will like. Pasta I can tolerate okay. So pasta is on the list for me.
And that's nice. If you can find a pasta that works, because you like a healthy red sauce, a little extra virgin olive oil. Perfect. So that's great. Having a default pasta option for your family is great. I don't tolerate wheat well, so I will either do an einkorn wheat pasta or I will do something like a lentil-based pasta, and I throw it with some red sauce, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So those are my carbs. Again, like pretty basic, right?
For me, I add sweet potatoes, all kinds in the pressure cooker. Now seasonally, like I do squash. You throw some squash in the Instapot. I pull it out, throw a little grass-fed butter on it with a little bit of salt, pepper, cinnamon. Phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Oh, we got Thomas Shields in the house.
Hey, Thomas.
Hey, gents, how do you see shifting one's nutrition and fitness when one has a cold, flu, et cetera, if at all? Yeah.
It's vitamin C, lots of fruits.
Well, I think it's like one thing is to follow your natural appetite inclination when you're sick. Like our body has a lot of wisdom, and what they have said in the past is if you have a viral illness, you want to give your body more calories. If you have a bacterial illness, you want to kind of starve that. And we don't always know what we exactly have when we're sick. And quite frankly, most of the time, it's probably a low-grade viral thing. What I like to do is do a little more like fasting and support anti-inflammatory pathways. So I'll be using some more ginger tea typically, which is ginger is a super potent anti-inflammatory that I love to get into the diet. I'll do some fasting. I think broths and soups with like chicken noodle soup, there's like a lot of wisdom in that. It's a broth. It has some salt. It can have some collagen in it, a little bit of protein, eat lighter. I would say like less digestive stress, Thomas. Like if there's something like a ribeye steak that takes like more digestive work for you to break down because you can feel it the next day, like, holy crap, I just ate a steak. Probably not the best thing when your body's trying to shunt resource and blood around the body to fight something. So I would say eat lighter and easier to digest foods, which typically are like soups. Some fruits are good. Eggs are really nice protein that's super tolerable for a lot of people. And the cholesterol in eggs actually helps your immune system fight things. I would jack up the vitamin D. Vitamin D is something that you can actually megadose when you're sick. And by megadose, I'm saying 20,000 IUs. It can really stimulate the immune system. I also would take melatonin while I'm sick and also sleep more if I can. And yeah, I think those are some good things. Anti-inflammatory, definitely soups and broths. Keep the sugar lower unless it's coming in the matrix of actually having a fruit where the fiber is helpful for that purpose. And I would say like eat the proteins that your body can digest really well, like chicken and lighter stuff, but don't go super heavy. I think it'd be a time not to eat a super, super heavy carb laden meal. Like you might feel better if you're eating lighter. And that would also mean like not necessarily like a ton of roughage. Like when I'm sick, I would feel better eating like more brothy or steamed vegetables versus having like a giant kale salad that's like a shit ton of roughage for the body to break down. Extra virgin olive oil, super anti-inflammatory, super antimicrobial, good to throw on everything. Like olive and olive leaf extract is phenomenal. So EVOO, however you can get that in the diet, would be quite awesome.
Cool. So my hack for when sick, I have a lemon ginger tulsi tea.
Yeah, that's great.
That's my thing. And I mix in lemon and honey.
Honey is great. Honey's great. Antimicrobial, raw honey. So raw honey is a great, great food. And I was actually talking to some like nutritionist chef recently at our event, and they have the concept that if you get raw local honey, it actually can help with your whole allergy immune response because those bees are actually kind of like building the honey off of like the local foliage and pollen counts. And when you get that, you're getting like some low grade exposure therapy. But yeah, honey in tea, great for sickness and all kinds of throat stuff. Richard asked like about how do you get kids to eat healthier without making a big argument? Dean can probably ask. I have a young daughter as well. I just like sneak things into her nutrition. Like I make her a healthy mac and cheese, In the mac and cheese, is like good quality. I use some grass-fed butter, some almond milk, and I throw nutritional yeast in there. And she can't tell, but it's basically like a high protein, multivitamin based mac and cheese. So you can also think of just upgrading their default option. If they're used to having the pizza or the mac and cheese, like you can also just upgrade the quality of that default option. And Dean, what do you have to say?
Ooh, you know what? I wish I had a better answer for you. My son has a very particular palate. So, getting him to eat foods that are new or getting him to eat foods that one would think of as healthy, he doesn't eat them. I don't have the best advice. This is where I would defer to other parenting advice. A book that I have read that I like is called Good Inside. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but I might have it over there. Oh, I do. I have it right there. Yeah. So Good Inside is a book that I like. There's also another book that I like called Hunt, Gather, Parent. That is another one that I really enjoyed. But I'll probably say something really unpopular, and Anthony might say something about it later. But I ate whatever my parents gave me, and I did not eat a healthy diet for a very long time. And then by the time I got into my 20s, I started to learn more about health. I started to eat better, and I knew what it was like to be able to have, a different kind of diet. My parents were really good about, they didn't let us have sodas or pop, as I call it, because I'm from the Midwest. I didn't have a lot of unhealthy food. They didn't we didn't have tons of snacks in the house. We only had like one or two snacks, but of course that was like the snack that I had, because if there was one available, then I was going to eat it. We had a lot of frozen meals. So, I didn't have the best diet, but the thing is that eventually I got to a point where I was making my own foods, and here I am, and I'm pretty healthy. So, kids are resilient. That's my advice.
And I have a kind of tack on rider to this.
Yeah.
There's two things with kids nutrition. There's like, they are eating unhealthy foods that we know in our bodies would create inflammation and are not optimal. So non-organic wheat, too much sugar, processed shit with seed oils, like that actually like creates harm. But kids are kind of like resilient to that because they have a lot of endogenous capacity to resist that. We lose that as we age and we feel the effects of that. They don't feel it as much. And then there's this idea that your kids are deficient, meaning they are like actually not consuming in their mouths these baseline nutrients that they need. They're not getting enough vitamins. They're not getting enough minerals. So what I want to say is, as a kind of strategy from a parenting perspective, is, okay, what if they still eat the same shit foods, but we're able to just get a super high quality multivitamin in them, or they're able to get a half a cup of a Dean style smoothie on top of everything else. Like, at least they're not operating from the standpoint of a deficiency. We're giving them the raw materials on top of the inflammatory stuff. And if I had to think is like, what's more important? It's like, look, if they do not get enough copper or selenium or molybdenum, their enzymes are just not going to work well enough. But if they get those things and they're getting a bunch of shit inflammatory oils on top of that, like, okay, like the body has the building blocks that it needs. So part of my strategy is getting a high quality chewable multivitamin in my daughter every day. The one I like is from a brand called Seeking Health. They're like doctor driven brand, amazing chewable multi. I get one of those in her and she's pretty small. It's like, it's sufficient. So you can even do that. You're covering the micronutrient bases and your kids will eat what they eat, but at least they're getting the raw materials. If they're not, then they're actually going to be deficient in an inflammatory environment. So that's one way to think about it as well.
Cool.
I think that's it. I think that was like we should wrap. If there's any last minute questions coming through, we'd love to field them.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of good stuff. I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to be here with us. We hope that this is always valuable. And from a kind of more like selfish standpoint, like I'm just grateful I get to hang out with this guy in person. This is an amazing human, and we have a really beautiful friendship that we've developed. We both have this heart of serving and going deep into health. So we are grateful for you guys. Thank you for coming so much. We appreciate you, and I'll hang out for like 20 or 30 more seconds before we end this. And then we hope everyone has a good night. If there's any more questions come through.
Yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in live. Hopefully your day has been relatively not stressful. It's been good for us. We've got a lot of content that we've created, videos. Someone is here. We've created a lot of videos for you. Hopefully some, combination of fun and also informational content. Anthony Dr. A is very, he goes hard in the paint, man. So I tried to have some fun with some of what we recorded as well, and I hope that you guys get to see that too, because he's putting out great information, but he's also a very fun, introspective, and a very compassionate human being. So yeah, be on the lookout for that stuff. Make sure you follow both of us. We're here on YouTube. We're on social media. We might be on TikTok.
One day maybe. Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
All
Thank
right,
you,
guys.
Jeff. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Austin from Heart Leader Podcast. Thank you, Risto. Thank you, all you guys, for tuning in. Bye, JR. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your night.
Bye, guys. Have a good one.